Greetings, friends, and welcome to the Musings from the Mount podcast, where we explore the intersection of spirituality, psychology, and global consciousness. I am your host, Joseph Carenza. In today's episode, I'm joined by Michael Lindfield and author and poet Mandy Kahn for a riveting discussion on the future of humanity. As technology advances, offering the possibility of altering our very bodies, we face a crucial decision. Do we embrace these changes, or do we preserve our organic nature? Join us as we delve into the profound implications of this choice, exploring the role of love, compassion, and intuition in our evolution. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please consider going to meditationmount.org and donating. Your donation helps us to bring you this podcast, as well as all the other programs the Mount produces, both today and in the future. We are incredibly grateful and honored by your support. All right, let's go with the podcast. Well, I am happy to be here today with three organic humans. We're three analog humans, I should say. And we're here today. We're going to touch on a couple different subjects, but one of the things that is compelling, we've had many discussions about AI, but there's a crossover point where the digital and the analog come together, and that's the transhumanism, trans cyborg kind of world that the science fiction world of which we're rapidly approaching a reality. So just earlier this year, Neuralink implanted their first device into a human, and it's working much better than they thought. There's been a couple of issues, but no like medical complications. But we sort of crossed the Rubicon of this is something that's no longer fiction, and it's something that's going to dominate, I think, our lives in the same way that AI is coming to dominate our lives. And what does this mean? What does this mean for humans? What does this mean? There's so many questions from, is this an unfair advantage if you have a mechanical leg and can run faster? Is it an unfair advantage if you have constant access to the internet? Like, how do you ever take a test in college? What do these mean things? And what does it mean to be human? And so I'm going to just throw it over to Mandy, one of the most organic, analog humans I know, that beautiful human, and say, what does it mean to be human? I mean, what is this about?
Well, just by way of that introduction, you have brought into this conversation and into the larger conversation the really important point that we are coming to as a species. And that's why this is arriving for us to consider. Because, when I was growing up, philosophy was considered to be a fun way to spend your time, especially if you were in school, or, some people were interested in philosophy and some people were interested in considering the larger questions like what is the self and what is the body and where are we in the universe? But it was understood that you could get through your day, you could get through your life, you could get through your job and not ask those questions. They were something that some of us naturally felt drawn to, but they weren't absolutely required. We are hitting a crossroads, and past this crossroads, we will no longer be able to not bring those questions to the center of our consideration, because this crossroads is making it necessary for us to make the most important decision that we will ever make as individuals. And that is that we are facing the choice. Do we choose to stay organic in this organic body and self, or do we choose to alter the human form? And we can't make that decision with any wisdom until we've asked the bigger questions. Well, what is the body? What is the self? So I've spent the last year or so really leaning into these questions and starting to formulate the way that I see things and starting to write about it. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys about it. And the first sort of central question that presented itself to me at the beginning of this conversation is, what is the self? The self, as I see it, is the body plus the soul. The self requires both things. What is the body? The body is an elegant, miraculous case for the soul. One has to understand what the body is and what the self is to begin to consider the question of what it is to alter the body. When you start to alter the body, the most important question to ask is, will this alteration come between the body and its central function, which is to house the soul? Will this alteration to the body make it so the body is less able to do what it's here to do, which is to house the soul? And I entered these questions with absolute openness, which is why I'm so excited to talk to you two here at Meditation Mount, which is a place that was created to give people the opportunity to open their mind by way of meditation, to clear the mind. And with a truly open mind, we can welcome in the higher part of ourselves. We can welcome in that which is more than wisdom, that which is a knowing of all that is available to every person. Intuition is inherent to us. It's an inherent part of every individual, just as inherent as our physicalized physiology is our intuitive physiology, is our energy body. And Meditation Mount is a place that was created so that people can engage with that aspect of their physiology, their higher knowing, by way of that openness, which I created in myself with non-attachment, and just sort of asked my higher self to show me what the relationship is between the body and the soul, and how technology, implanted technology, would interrelate. And essentially what I started to see was that essential changes to the body will eventually interfere with the body's ability to fully house the soul. And what has been really interesting for me as a writer, as I'm starting to write about this, is to start to describe the difference between a non-essential alteration to the body and an essential alteration to the body. I asked my higher self to sort of show me the difference between an essential and non-essential alteration to the body to get a sense of how that works. And what I was sort of shown was that if we create a ceramic cup, that ceramic cup can hold water. If that ceramic cup has a tiny hairline crack in it, it will probably still be able to hold water. If it has a couple of tiny hairline cracks, it will still probably be able to hold water. But if that cup has a big crack in it or has a hole in it, it won't be able to hold water. And there is a relationship like that between the body and the soul. When the body has little non-essential alterations to it, it can still house the soul. But as those alterations become bigger, the ability for the body to house the soul becomes compromised, and less of the soul can be housed in the body. And the relationship between body and soul, the body's ability to house the soul, almost gets turned down over time, like a volume knob turning down over time. What's interesting about this is that the lower mind wants the light switch to be on or off. It wants to say either the body can hold all the soul or the body can't hold any of the soul. When what really happens is like this gentle, gradual fading out of the body's ability to house the soul, which is because the self is the body and the soul. It's essentially a fading out of the self, of selfhood. And eventually, over time, what happens is when these essential alterations to the body happen, the self is less able to exist. We become less soul and more body. And essentially, what we become is less human, less humane, more mechanical, and the altered human becomes a branch of the species with no future.
That is a profound statement, Mandy. Thank you. It brings up this whole question of what's our function in the great chain of being. Because as you said, if you're making alterations to something, it's in order to improve its functionality, in order for it to perform its destiny, its purpose more elegantly, more wisely, more efficiently. So unless you've asked these meta questions about who are we, where do we fit in, what's the functionality, what does it mean to be human, why dink with and mess with the instrument until you understand what it's there to do? And Joey and I in the podcast have been exploring that perhaps that we provide this connective tissue between the subtle worlds and the incarnated world. It's this bridge to the intuitive mind, and the intuitive mind has access to cosmic ideation, the inflow of the mind of the creator. And unless you have that connective tissue in place, the impressions you receive are not going to come from the source of imagination, the source of ideals and ideas. It's going to be just drawing upon what is already known inside the lower mind. And so we've done podcasts on AI, but the whole time we go back to why are we here on Earth? Not just to survive, but if we're part of the living planet, this species called humanity, which is the fourth realm, as it's said, and 4 is always the connective tissue between the lower vibrating 3 and the upper vibrating 3. We are this sort of bridge between heaven and earth, if you want to take it down to its very basic biblical interpretation. So I think what you've just opened is an incredibly important conversation. It's not will it help people to think better or to move their limbs better with implants. It's a question, does it serve, in the greater scheme of things, us fulfilling our part in the great planetary life, of which we are an integral part. And so I'd love to hear more, because we've hit this brick wall as a humanity that we can't answer the deep questions until we've really lived into what it means to be alive on Earth, beyond survival and beyond competition. And as was said just earlier, if you have a mechanical leg, is it fair? Because you can run faster. You can have that kind of conversation if you are thinking that we're in a competitive environment, that somehow life is a competition. But if life is this symbiotic relationship to carry out a deeper destiny, the whole thing changes. So I'd love to hear more of what's coming through you, and also Joey, what's prompted by what I found was a profoundly beautiful intervention by Mandy.
We are here to evolve. We evolve naturally, and all evolution is towards a realization and a choosing of our own peacefulness. So there is a natural pull that underlies all that we do, all that we experience. It is a pull forward. It is a pull in the forward direction of our evolution. Everything that we're here to be curious about, experiment with, learn about, learn from, is teaching us eventually that we are beings, underneath everything, we are beings of love without end and compassion without end. We are beings of peacefulness. And we are here to come to understand our deepest, truest nature, even in a society that tells us something else about ourselves. We are here to eventually have enough information about ourselves, enough knowledge about ourselves, enough wisdom about ourselves, enough insight to learn enough to come to understand our true nature. And once we come to understand our true nature, our peaceful and loving true nature, we choose it. We choose it because we're beings of free will. And when we come to understand that after choosing everything else on the buffet of options, living in a way that is honoring of others, respectful of others, honoring of the earth, respectful and loving towards all beings, harmonically living with others, living in a way that accommodates others, that is inherent. It's the kind of generosity and kindness that doesn't consider the difference or separation between beings. When you realize that your left hand and your right hand are both parts of the body, you cannot perceive competition between the left hand and the right hand. You understand that to bring health to the left hand is to bring health to the right hand and the body. You understand the oneness of all things. So we're here to evolve into this greater understanding of what we are, an understanding of our inherent nature, and a conscious free will choosing of that nature. And everything that we do is an opportunity to make small discoveries that add up to the biggest discovery that we can possibly have, which is to understand also the connectedness of all beings. We're not on separate teams. We're not fighting against each other. We are one humanity in which we are having individuated experiences that are also a collective experience, and the health of the individual is the health of the whole. The health of our neighbor to the left or our neighbor to the right contributes to the health of the self. We have one, connected consciousness. We're truly in this together. We're here to have that experience. And we've been having the experience of exploration and knowledge gathering towards that kind of epiphany at our own rate. And we've had the opportunity to move as quickly or as slowly towards that kind of epiphany as we've wanted to. But this question of technology does put an absolute timer on that, because the roads are separating, and they're separating in a way that is permanent. The way that I sort of see it when I ask to be shown how this works is when we look at a handful of different species of birds that exist on this planet right now and live different places on the planet, we can look backwards and realize that there was one parent colony of birds that over time split and evolved into all of these different subspecies of birds that are living in different places on the planet and having totally different experiences. If we move backwards to that first group of birds before the split happened, and if we imagine ourselves into that incredibly important choosing of groups, we are at that exact choice point as humans. I like to imagine it like the time at which there was Pangea, one giant landmass that all the continents were a part of. What happened was that there was individual earthquakes that separated tectonic plates, and this one landmass over an incredible amount of time started to separate, and those plates separated, and eventually we had very different land masses with very different ecosystems. If there was one group of birds, say 1,000 birds, that were living in one place on this connected landmass, at the moment of that first earthquake, at the moment that the tectonic plates started to shift, for a short amount of time, that group of 1,000 birds, whether they were sort of on one side or other side of the divide, they would be very, very close cousins. It would seem like not a huge difference to be on one part of the divide or the other part of the divide. But what's required at this moment in history is to be able to lean into our intuition, lean into our vision, and look forward on both of these trajectories to say, well, one of these land masses is going to become the South Pole and the other one is going to become, North America or Greenland or South America or, China or Asia. And these are going to be very, very different experiences because we're at the place of the split. At the time of the split, we're all close together. But the difference between a person who is living in a technologically altered body, and then the trajectory of that person's children who are technologically altered and their children who are technologically altered, as opposed to the experience of those on the other side of the divide who live in the organic body and their children live in the organic body and their children live in the organic body. It is going to be like the difference between penguins and seagulls. Actually, much more different, because those are both organic beings, but we can start to get an idea of the incredible difference that each one of us came here to be aware of, and we came to choose. We are not only choosing for ourselves, we are choosing for our family line, our children, our children's children, our children's children's children, our branch of the species. Each one of us is the Abraham of our branch of the species. We are the great, 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 great grandparent of an enormous branch of the species. And we are choosing not just for ourselves, but for all who come forward from our genetic line. This is the most important choice we've ever made. And every soul that came here to be here at this moment did it with intention because of the incredible power of this choice.
Wow. What you've just described about this choice point also shows us the magic and the mystery of creation is that the diversity is the way in which the one life can reveal its infinite beauty. As long as we understand that we are all expressions of the one life. When the split happens, the split can produce different variations on the theme, but if the split is a split of identity and a split in our ability to understand that we're part of one common heritage, we're part of one common planet, I think what you've just shown is that this split is a different split from before. This is not just a new species, organic species. We're actually setting in motion a chain of events that we don't know the effect on the seventh generation. And so I believe the whole object of the one, as we've often quoted the Bhagavad Gita, like having pervaded the universe with a fragment of myself, yet I remain. So this one life projects itself into its myriad fragmented parts in order to reveal the manifold infinite beauty of itself. And then in order to have that be a synthetic realization, it calls its parts home. We're part of the homecoming. The question is, can technically altered aspects find their way home of their own volition? Because you talked about free will. Free will is connected with our deep identity. We have the free will, and in the end, free will is just when we say yes to who we are, not whether. And so you've
That's right.
I think what you just I hadn't thought of it this way. We are facing a point in time where our decisions now will make probably an even greater effect on the evolution of consciousness than ever before on this planet. Wow. Joey, what did this stir in you? Because that was provocative.
This brought up many questions for me. But one of the things that just popped into my head as you were speaking there at the end is, so one of the things that products of becoming a digital human would be interconnectedness. So you'd be able to, speak, telepathy would become real. And I was wondering if that isn't the end of humanity, is telepathy the end of humanity? Because is humanity basically an individualized experience, like all these individualized experiences of the one? And if you take away that veil, then that is that what really means to be human, is to have this illusion that you're separate from the one. And if you become digital, then you aren't separate anymore. And so that would be the end of the illusion. So in that sense, I could see how becoming a cyborg human would be the end of humanity. But I wonder about that. Is that non-connectedness the end of human experience?
So the organic path leads very quickly to telepathy. We are here to evolve forward, and in a very short amount of time, those that stay organic, their telepathy comes online organically. So the trajectory of the organic human on. So I guess central to understanding that is understanding what we are. So we are, the organic human is in its babyhood. So we are still a relatively young species, but the baby of us is about ready to start standing, to become a toddler, to become a young child, to become a teenager, to become a fully realized adult. We are in the process of that evolution. And as we lean into our organic evolution, what happens is abilities come online for the organic human that to the lower mind seem supernatural. They seem almost impossible, except that's because when a baby with its baby mind gazes at the 100-year-old person that it will become, it seems like two different beings. It seems impossible that the baby is going to become that 100-year-old self. But that's what nature teaches us. We are always evolving. No baby stays the same for any length of time. The person is always evolving. No plant stays the same for any moment in time. A plant is always evolving. So the organic evolution that we can observe in one human lifetime, that we can observe in the cycle of any field or forest, it's happening within the individual and it's happening within the species. And it is so much more profoundly miraculous than anything that we could create with our built technologies. And the reason that there's this split in the species is that once we start messing with the body, which has this natural unfolding programmed within it, then the natural unfolding can't happen. So a good way to understand this would be to say, if you gave me an avocado pit and I did nothing with it, if I just put it on, put it in the ground and the rains came and the sun came, it would naturally become an avocado tree. And it would show me as the observer what the life cycle of one avocado tree is. And then it would drop avocados and it would become a grove over time. And it would show me its natural unfolding. If I cut an avocado pit in half and put a couple of chips that I made in a lab into that avocado pit and then, put it in the ground, nothing would happen. We know that if we cut an avocado pit in half and that if we mess with it, we know that if we put it in the ground, nothing will happen. We know that we cut off its natural unfolding when we mess with it. We know that when we watch the natural life cycle of a plant, even as we watch it, even adults who watch it, we're just overcome with the mystery and the beauty and the majesty of that life cycle. That's because we, with the babyhood of our lower mind, we're gazing at all that is, and it looks mysterious and it looks miraculous to us because it's just bigger than anything that we could fabricate or create. That unfolding is happening in us. Whether we are conscious of it or not, we are evolving as individuals, we are evolving as a species, and what is coming online for us, what will come online for us in the forward extrapolation of the organic timeline is so much more miraculous than the lower mind can possibly comprehend, and certainly so much more advanced than what the lower mind could create in a lab.
Wow. Joey's question also prompted some reflection on my part here as I was listening to you. It's like, yes, you can connect us digitally and therefore we become the unified field, if you like, at the densest level. But if you go back to the Agni Yoga teachings that we refer to quite a lot here, it talks about the heart. The heart is the great connective tissue from the individual to the collective to the cosmos. And what is flowing is not just electricity, it's love. And I guess that for me is the differentiator. Can this technology allow love to flow? Because our higher circuitry is built out of loving substance. Love can flow through the substance. Whereas if we create something of a technological nature, does that have the evolution of substance to allow love to flow through it? And can it be a generator of love? Or is it just a connector that allows impulses to go around an electrical circuit? So I think Joey's question raises this whole thing of, well, what is the lifeblood? Is it just some sort of cosmic electricity? Or is this electricity what we call love? So it goes, this conversation is opening even deeper doors of, wow, it isn't just can technology make us smarter, but can it allow love to flow more freely on the planet? Which gets to your point about, well, then if love was to flow more freely on the planet, wars would cease. So it's like, bring on the drones. I mean, and the clones.
One thing that they brought up when you were talking about essential versus non-essential, and I maybe wanted to, I don't even know if this is possible. Can we establish a baseline? What is the line that you were talking about? I mean, is a pacemaker, like, does that cross the line, or does it, if Neuralink does end up bringing people that have spinal cord injuries and allows them to move again, is that the line? Like what, or is it have to be more than that? Does it have to be some kind of access to, the internet or to the cloud? What do you think, in your opinion? What is the line that takes you from human to transhuman?
A pacemaker, an artificial hip, these are not essential alterations to the body. Just like wearing braces, on your teeth is not an essential alteration to the body. But this is what's so interesting about that which is organic, is that it is a fine line. The difference between one hairline crack in the body and 10 hairline cracks, or one hairline crack and one deep crack, it is a subtle difference. So while an artificial hip is not an essential alteration, that which interfaces with the brain is an essential alteration. When we understand how energy flows through the body, when we understand how acupuncture works in the body, we begin to understand that the way that energy flows is based on this interconnectedness, this symbiosis, this wholeness of the organism, the miraculous wholeness. You could call it holiness of the organism. So when you understand that that's energetic, it's about flowing energy, it's vibrational, suddenly you realize that your interest in bringing healing to the body is an interest in bringing healing to the body by its own means, with its own methods. That's why things like herbs of the earth become very interesting, because you realize that which has evolved alongside the body, just as the body has naturally evolved from the earth and with nature, the herbs of the earth have evolved too, and are a natural fit to support the body in its evolution. There are also technologies that can both support the body and not interfere with the body. And when we come to understand that the body's highest function is to house the soul, then we start to ask the much more essential questions, which are, how do I support the body when it needs support in a way that honors what it can do that I don't understand yet? How can I be of help only? And the answer to that question is always the invention or advancement that you can see when you are seated in your higher mind, your higher consciousness. When you lift your perspective. So the way I imagine it, our consciousness is like a building with 20 floors. And so your perspective can be seated in your lower mind. Let's say the basement of your consciousness or the first floor of your consciousness. When your perspective is in the lower part of your consciousness, if it's in the basement, there aren't any windows. You don't have much perspective or information. You're just guessing. When you're in the penthouse of your own consciousness, you can see everything that's around you. You can see miles in every direction. You have so much more information. When we learn how to walk the staircase of our own consciousness until we get to the higher place in our consciousness, when we get up to the penthouse of our consciousness, to our peace mind, and then we ask an open question like, how do I support the body? How do I aid the body in a way that honors that which is natural and organic in the body? The inventions and advancements that you begin to see when you're in the higher part of your consciousness are advancements that honor and work with your body. The organic path is the path of greater innovation, but it's the path of innovations that always honor the earth, that always honor the body, that understand wholeness and support us in leaning into wholeness, that never fracture.
Wow. I had what I can say a disquieting thought as you were thinking. It's like, maybe we've misunderstood technology. What if evolution is the technology employed by the Creator? The natural technology, as though we're saying technology is not natural. But if evolution is the technique, technology, protocol, process, the way in which the life reveals itself, then we're really going back to the fundamental question, does any intervention into the body enhance its capacity to fulfill its destiny and to fulfill the purpose of the soul, which is to be this conduit, this circulatory generator of love, the lifeblood. And when love, it flows, we are connected. And when we're connected, we have access to the accumulated wisdom of the universe. So we access it in a different way you'd access a database. And what I'm hearing us saying before is like AI is like this magic database of everything we have, an aggregate of everything that's been created. And AI is this supercomputer that can compute faster than my brain at the moment. However, can it bring in a presence of love that imbues the whole of creation with its fundamental imprinting? Because until I have come into integration and alignment and I've merged with my soul, I have not become technologically enabled from an organic perspective to receive, register, and radiate the love that is at the heart of all creation. This is what I believe in the depth of my being. So it brought, we have to it's a redefinition of all our terms now and putting all our terms into a larger context.
Yeah.
So to touch on Joey's earlier question, telepathy that is brought on by tech brings us access to data about others. But telepathy that is naturally unfolding by way of the organic path is a knowing of our own love of others. It is a connecting to the field of all knowing. And when we connect to the field of all knowing, that includes a knowing of who we are. It includes the feeling of compassion for all beings. It includes a revelation of our peaceful and loving true nature. And we can see ourselves and others clearly. And when we see them clearly, there is only love. And when we see them clearly, we realize that only by bringing health to the system, by bringing health to our neighbor to the left and our neighbor to the right and to ourselves, do we all advance together. So there is a way to manipulate by way of technology something that looks like telepathy, but data about others is not knowing about others, and it is certainly not knowing about ourselves. And if we walk the path of data about others, we disallow ourselves the ability to walk the path of knowing about others. And that is such an incredible trade-off. It is a trade-off that no one would ever make if they truly saw what they would be giving away for the short-term hit of, wouldn't it be cool to have more data right now? The trade-off for that is your future, your children's future, your children's children's future.
Well, that brings up a question, and it has to do with this is like a kind of a two-part question. So let me first set it up in the sense of like, if the goal of human evolution, humanity is, let's just say it's to maximize love and to spread the light of human consciousness. Let's say if we take those two as a goal, and then we look at the sheer expanse of the universe, right? So if we're going to make human consciousness multiplanetary, multigalactic, is the merging of the analog and the digital? Like, can we teach a circuit about love? Can we put consciousness into a digital form so that it can transverse these great distances? Because it does raise a question of like, what are we being too, like, is it like life only, this one certain kind of chemical life form, or could life be, arsenic, silicon? Is it confined to that one thing? And what if we find that consciousness emerges in these other systems?
Well, a kind of thinking can emerge in these other systems, but it's not consciousness. So it is a kind of comprehension and a kind of decision making that is based upon pattern recognition and extrapolation based on past knowledge. But essentially, the difference between the lower mind and the higher mind is that the lower mind uses deduction and reasoning and pattern recognition and data collection and evaluates a bunch of data to make a step forward. And that step forward is always a tiny, tiny baby step. The higher mind, so when you lift your perspective up into your higher mind, you're able to access all that is, because that is the highest part of our consciousness. We are connected beings. When we simply lift up into our peace mind, or the higher part of our consciousness, we reconnect with the field of all that is. We don't need to collect small pieces of data because we have access to all the data. But more than that, we have true understanding. We have true knowing. We have direct revelation. We have our intuition. We have inherent connectedness. We have inherent telepathy. We have everything. We simply don't need the lower mind's tools anymore. When you have everything, you don't need those low calculations. But at the same time, it's not just that in our higher mind we have access to all information. It's that access is colored by, flavored by unending compassion, unending peacefulness, the love that is the true flavor of the universe of which we are a part. So it's more than just, the lower mind thinks of it as, the person with the most data wins. But the higher mind understands that the data, it's easy to have all the data because all you have to do is shift up into your higher mind. But what matters is not the data, but an understanding of it, the love that connects it, the love that birthed the universe and this earth and the individual, and that connects all of us. It is that flavor, that tenor of connection that the lower mind can't understand, and that the higher mind can't not understand.
Right. I think this is a great door that has been opened by this question. And I go back to the Agni Yoga teachings that says the connection that we have is through the heart. It's heart to heart to heart. And there's a phrase in Agni Yoga called hearts across distance, which is what you do. Telepathy is hearts across distance. The thing is, when you are connected heart to heart, distance collapses. There is no distance. Time and space collapse. So it's hearts across distance and dimensions. So the fact that we actually have a technological organism waiting to be activated. So we may not, I agree, if somebody has a spinal injury and a Neuralink can help them move their limbs, wonderful. But to connect to the love that underlies all of creation, we already have that technology that is online, ready for us to access. We don't understand that it's right here in the center of our being. It's our heart. And that is the connective tissue with the cosmos, with each other, with life purpose. So that's why I like to think of the heart as divine technology. It is that which allows life to be in touch with itself, to understand itself, to stand under itself, to know itself, as you would say. That's why I think the language that they're using around technology and is limiting. I appreciate Joey's questions because we're trying to break free from the limitations of thinking it's this or it's that. And yet, there is this incredible opportunity. If we were to step into or through this portal that is awaiting us, the only way we can step through this portal is by being loving, kind, and peaceful. We can create technology to give us more data, but how does more love flow in? The only way is to open the heart. And we've talked about this before. The heart can only be open once it's been broken. We have to feel. We have to know that we are feeling beings, not just thinking beings. And feelings are not just emotions. Feeling is a sensing of the one life rippling through us.
Mm-hmm. That's a. I see what you're saying.
So beautifully said.
Yeah.
So beautifully said, Michael. And it's interesting because when we lean into the abilities of our own higher mind, when we lean into the highest perspective of our consciousness, and from that high perspective, we look down at what the lower mind is trying to do, we feel nothing but compassion for our lower mind and all people who are engaged in the lower mind. Because when we build technologies to support the lower mind, quite often we're doing it with this humanitarian impulse. It's the lower mind doing what it does, which is trying to solve the challenges of the world with its very limited resources. But we have so much love for that desire to make things better for each other by way of these technological advancements. It is from the higher perspective, we have love for all, not just all aspects of self, but all parts of our own trajectory as evolving humans. We look back at our own babyhood and we don't say, oh, terrible for us to have crawled on the floor and drooled. We say it was perfect for us to crawl on the floor at one point. It was perfect for us to drool. It was perfect for us to use a diaper, but I don't choose to do that anymore because now I've evolved past that and I don't need the diaper anymore. Now I can stand up and I get to make, conscious choices about how to live. We are at that choice point too as a humanity where we can say we can love the lower mind and its attempt to bring about telepathy the only way that it knows how, which is by way of mechanical means. We can love that part of us, but we can still choose the part of us that is wiser. We have the heart's voice and we have the perspective of the higher mind. We have these gorgeous resources. We also have the lower mind. And to step forward in our evolution is to wrap in our own compassion all parts of ourselves. Not to say, oh, shame on the lower mind for not knowing better. No, never to say, oh, shame on me for being a 2-year-old toddler that didn't know how to walk. No, to embrace all parts of ourselves and our neighbors and the people that we know and people as we lift our perspective, we can see that people are trying their best. They are experimenting. They are doing what they can with the limits of being positioned in the lower mind. And then we can simply say, we don't have to have those limits anymore. Let's learn how to walk the staircase of our own consciousness. Let's learn how to lean into our intuitive and inherent abilities. Let's lean into the heart's wisdom. That's why we're here at this historic moment to say, do I choose the heart's voice or do I choose the lower mind's methods? And to realize that we are both things and to embrace both in our love and compassion, and then to make a new choice because we've been choosing the methods of the lower mind for so long. And it's time to make a new choice. When I was growing up, going to regular schools, I went to these huge public schools growing up in Southern California, we were taught that the heart, any reference to the heart was a silly, childish thing to do. It wasn't taken seriously. The mind, the lower minds, mathematics and science were considered to be the highest expression of self. And if you talked about the heart, everybody rolled their eyes and you were discredited and, you were considered to not have anything to contribute to the situation. We have to, in order to evolve forward, we have to understand that the heart's wisdom and the higher mind's perspective is the deeper wisdom, and to simply understand that it was a phase of our development to not understand the profound abilities of the heart, and to step into that understanding.
Wow. I just had this wild idea. Say if Joey could work his magic and right now from this recording studio, hack into and access every single screen on the world, on the planet, and you, Mandy, were given 20 seconds to talk to humanity. What would you say at this critical time?
Yeah. That's a good question. Yeah. Not to put you on the spot or anything. Yeah. All right.
How about I answer that at the very end?
All right. Yeah.
Then I have between now and then to come up with my answer.
I just threw that out because I thought then I really appreciate the perspective and the wisdom that you're bringing, and it's stimulating me to make more connections and distinctions and differentiations, which is how consciousness evolves, through differentiation. But as long as differentiation doesn't become divisive, it becomes how we appreciate the manifold nature of the one.
Well, it's very interesting that you use the word divisive, because I was wondering why this technology piece has become so important to me. I've just spent a year of my life thinking about this and starting to write about this. And I wondered why, because my bigger project is the project of elucidating peace, how to come to understand our own peacefulness, how to lean into the use of our peace minds, and how to lean forward into our evolution into a peaceful species and a harmonic species. Why has this technology piece of it become so important to me when the peace project is my biggest project in this lifetime? Mm-hmm. And it's because they're connected. It's because our organic evolution is evolving us towards a discovery and an understanding and a choosing of our own peacefulness. We evolve towards our own peacefulness, and all we have to do is not mess with the organic human body, and that evolution happens naturally. The tide is always carrying us towards a discovery of our own peacefulness as individuals and as a collective. However, if we hack into the body and mess with our body, mess with our DNA, we stop this natural trajectory, and the branch of the species that we represent does not, it disconnects. It becomes something, but it's almost like, if you think of a big, huge, beautiful tree that has tree rot on one large branch, and then the sort of small branches that come off of that large branch. What happens is this implanting of technology will create that sort of rot on that branch of the species. It might still, exist for a few more seasons, a few more winters, but eventually that is going to become a dead limb and dead branches of that tree. There's no deep future for the technologically altered being. Again, it'll be interesting to see how many generations move forward, but it's ultimately a timeline with a hard stop. Whereas the rest of the tree, the organic part of the tree, we're just stepping out of our babyhood. It's going to be amazing to see what we evolve into on the organic part of the tree.
Wow. And people who come from a religious background, or particularly if they've read the Bible, understand the phrase, we're made in the image and likeness of God or the Creator. So we are being asked to recreate creation. Therefore, we have to understand what was the desire and intent behind creation, not just the mechanics of creation. And I believe, when I sense into it, love was the intent. Love is the flowering that is being sought through the evolutionary cycle. Now, if we start to launch something into space, a new creative variation on a theme called humanity, if it's not impelled and compelled and propelled by love, it's not going to replicate. We're not going to be the microcosmic representation of the macro. We're not going to be the fractal that recreates the wholeness, because it's not built on love. Now it goes back to, can it convey love? But also, now we get to the point is, can technology generate love? And this is where, and I mean, we're just opening the door for a whole nother podcast, I think, yeah.
Well, I think I do have to ask, so, I've brought this up in other podcasts, and this is a sort of a pet concept of mine, but so what if we do live in a simulation, right? And I want to take the concept of writing, like you write what you know, right, as a writer. So if we are living in a simulation, then what's happening here? Are we actually evolving this technology because it is what we are at our heart? We are this technology, and we are running on some sort of hardware, and that we're actually trying to teach the hardware how to love. We're trying to figure out how to be able to transmute love into ones and zeros. Is that because it seems to me that there is something to that, because we can't really prove that we don't live in a simulation. There's really that's the leap of faith.
It's the language there. So we don't live in a technological simulation. We live in an ongoing creation. So the original creation has never ended. So what's useful about picturing it as a simulation is it's useful to understand that we are the thinker and the thought. We are the creator and the created. We are both of those things, but we are that in an organic form, not in a technological or simulated form. So it just comes down to semantics in an understanding of where we come from. But it is accurate that we are we're the playwright and we're the players on the stage, except that it's all organic. So when we misconstrue that as being mechanical or lab generated, then we will very soon, in a few generations, learn the inaccuracy of that, and then we'll get another chance to discover what is true, which is that we are in in an organic creation, you could call it a simulation, but an organic one.
So it goes back to choice. How do we make the choice? Do we make it because this looks better? Or do we say, because in my heart of hearts, this is the direction I feel that life needs to go? I trust my heart because my mind can get so polarized. I go back and forth. Should I do this? Should I do that? What if I do this? And then I get so confused. I have to stop and say, look, let go. A part of you already knows who you are. You haven't created the receptive organism to make that connection and to have that knowing imbue the whole of your being. So the heart, for me, allows deep knowing to enter every cell of my body. So the choice for me has to be a heartful choice, not just a mindful choice. It's both. And it isn't that we're going to come to the absolute answer to everything today. But what we're doing is we're asking the questions, and that's a theme that Joey and I have explored recently, is like, forget about the answers. As Rilke said, it's more important to live the questions, because when you live the questions, eventually the answers start to live inside of you. And one day you'll know because you've lived the questions. So I think it's so important that we today in this podcast are seeding these questions into the ethers, and not to come up with the right answers, but to come up with our understanding of how the answering takes place. We're not looking for the answer. We're looking for what is the process for answering the call of life. I mean, that's where it sits for me.
Yeah.
Wow. Mandy, thank you for your contributions.
Yeah. That was fantastic. And I really appreciate how thoughtful you've been about this. And, I can tell you've been spending quite a bit of time going deep on this. And what do you think, where do you see us, because this is telescoping, things are picking up so fast. So where do you see us in the next couple of years as this ramps up? I mean,
Well, you're exactly right in that this question being put to individuals, the question of, do you want to implant technology in your body, is focusing us on these central questions. As I said earlier, it's making it required consideration. The bigger questions of life are no longer thought of as, a fun extravagance for, college students or high school students that want to lay around on, fluffy pillows and read philosophy, but then you have to get to work. No, this is central. We cannot make the most important decision in any individual's life that's alive right now without centering this big consideration. It's not frippery. It's not just for fun. It's necessary. And you're right. When we lean into the bigger questions, and back to Meditation Mount, when we create openness in the self, when we create silence in the mind, when we become truly open to receive any answer to the question, because the necessary part of receiving the accurate knowing of what is creating true receptivity to any awareness that is accurate coming into the self, creating non-attachment, learning. That's what's so beautiful about Meditation Mount. It's a place that says all that is required is silence in the mind. All that is required is openness. All that is required is silence, and all that is already in you, and it will simply become apparent. But that's what this moment in history is. It's a foregrounding of the big questions. It is understanding that we can't move forward without really bringing this into the center of our public conversation.
Right. We're not here to invent the future. We're here to reveal the future. The question is, what aids, what support mechanism does it take to reveal the truth that lives at the heart of our being? What does it take to reveal the love that lives at the heart of every human soul? I mean, that's the question. And I'm not asking myself for an answer now, but I want to live that question.
It flows in effortlessly when space is created in the self. That's what's so beautiful. It was a loving thought that created the universe. It is love and peace and compassion. These are the essential elements of the universe. And when we create openness in the self, that which is flows in effortlessly and naturally. And we return again to a knowledge of all that is, of which we are a part. That's why it's so easy to be pulled forward in our evolution. The only way to stem to cut off our natural evolution towards our own peacefulness is to mess with the body, is to mess with our natural unfolding, which is why I think it became so important to me to really spend a year of my life in open contemplation of this, because on the other side of it, on the side of choosing the organic body, of the side of exploring our organic trajectory, what's so close down the organic pathway is stepping into harmony as a species, is the end not just of one war, but of all wars, is the beginning of the pervasive peace that has no end. It is the era of peace that awaits us when we lean into that which is organic. And when we lean into that which is synthetic, we cannot find our way towards the pervasive peace that wants to be born in the individual and in the collective. So even though this conversation is about technology, it's about so much more than technology. It's about peace. It's about the peace that begins and does not end.
And if you look at the ageless wisdom teachings and go back to what you said about Pangaea and the breaking up of the continents, it's said that the next civilization that comes forward will be called Pacificus. There will be a new landmass. And the center of this new landmass, it's said, is where Brazil currently is. But the world will look different because every new garden has to be created for the new flowering. And so we are entering the age of peace at a meta level. So we talk about Atlantis sank. We're in this Indo-Aryan, European continent. And then in order for peace to grow, a new environment has to be created. And so the natural conditions will be, there will be a breakup. And this is what the ageless wisdom teaching is hinting at, whether we believe it or not. It confirms what you were saying, is that the next iteration will be allowing the rise of Pacificus. We have the sinking of Atlantis. We have the evolution of the mind through this current civilization, and the heart-centered, peace-loving evolution of our next phase as human beings will happen through the rising of Pacificus and usher in the era of peace. I mean, that's the meta view. And so for me, all the things that you've just said, just say, oh, right, it might be true. Or, oh, yeah, that confirms that this is part of evolution. And I'm not here to judge. I'm here to be in co-resonant relationship and co-creative relationship with life. If I'm here to judge, I cut myself off. But if I'm willing to be an active agent of life as it unfolds, I am the revelation. We are the revelation of life. Rather than what does life mean? No, we are the answering of life. We are life answering itself. Mm-hmm. And that's where the words have to stop, and you enter the silence. And what I love about this one Agni Yoga saying is that silence is the synthesis of all sound. And therefore, the heart is the synthesis of all love. It's the container that can hold the synthesis of all love. Universal love. We have access to universal love right here and now through our own individual ceramic cup of the heart.
It rises in the self first. The age of peace rises in the self first. It becomes the self of peace. And then that which is in the self manifests externally. So what we are living in is a projection of what is in the self. So simulation is an interesting way of describing it. It's the projector is at the center of the self, and the projection is external to the self. So if we want to change the projection outside of ourselves, which is the world that we are creating and co-creating with others, we change that which is in the self first. We create peace in the self, harmony in the self. We create compassion for self. We reconcile with all parts of the self. We stop the practice of pointing fingers at aspects of the self, pointing at the foot and saying, you did that, or pointing at the hand and saying, you are to blame. But instead, we come to wrap all aspects of the self in our own compassion, and we create harmony in the self, and then we project that harmony outward. And again, that's why I love Meditation Mount, because all that is required for that reconciliation with self is to create enough space, enough openness in the mind that we naturally return to that balance that's the original soup of the universe. That's the primordial soup that we came from. We came from the soup of harmony and love and compassion and balance. And when we create openness in the self, that soup flows in, and it is a kind of, you could say, rebirth, or just returning to the amniotic fluid that surrounds us and is in us, and we birth that which is more loving.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Another feast, Joey.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming and sharing all this. And Michael too, that, this has been a great conversation, and it's really, it's for me, it's really brought in a bunch of different perspectives that I hadn't really considered. And I just really appreciate it. I'm really grateful for everything that you've been sharing. And I really admire this effort that you're putting into this, because it is, as someone too that sort of enjoyed philosophy as a kind of a, I mean, like, I fell into that, the philosophy of like, let's sit on couches and let's sit at a coffee house and talk. But we're actually seeing it. We're actually building the philosophy of the next generation is happening, and it's going to happen in real time.
Well, we are realizing the philosophy. Mm-hmm. We've got to make it real.
Yeah.
That's what realization and revelation is. This is the age of revelation. Yeah. This is what self-realization means at the meta level for humanity. So I want to just echo what Joey said. Thank you, Mandy. And when your writing project is complete, if there is ever a completion, I'd love us to continue this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you want to
the 20 seconds to the world? No, Joey has just hacked into every single screen on the planet, and you're given. Well, we say 20 seconds, but it's a timeless 20 seconds for you to speak to the world through your heart and your wisdom on behalf of life.
What I will say about this moment in history is that war is rising up in so many places right now, and front and center in our awareness, because we are being given a choice. Not the choice that has been marketed to us. The choice that was marketed to me was to choose a side, choose an opinion in regards to any of the many conflicts happening on the earth, to choose a side, because each conflict is a kind of tug of war. So to choose a side and grab onto that side of the rope and pull on behalf of some, and to defeat others. So I was told that my ability my ability to choose was to choose sides and to pull on behalf of some and to have compassion for those that I am pulling on behalf of and to withhold my compassion from those on the other side of the rope. When in fact, the real choice is to decide whether to hold compassion for all beings. And we can do that while having an opinion about any one conflict or every conflict. We can have any opinion and we can still choose to carry compassion for all beings. And that's the choice, is not which side to advocate for. Because if you're pulling on either side of the rope, and that pulling includes an excluding of some people from your compassion, you're simply adding energy to the war fire that is burning. You withdraw the energy from the war fire that is burning when instead you say, regardless of my opinion, I choose to carry within me the spirit of compassion for all beings. When you carry the spirit of compassion for all beings, you can have any opinion. You can move between opinions. You can have the fun of consideration in the mind, but the compassion that is in you always builds the ultimate peace, the peace that arrives and does not leave, the beginning of the age of peace. So that is available to you, regardless of your opinion. You can always choose to hold the spirit of compassion without end within you. And when you do, you are creating the age of peace. You are making it manifest in the now.
Wow. So compassion without end is the space in which evolution naturally occurs.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Wow. It's beautiful, Mandy. Thank you so much.
Right. Yeah, thank you, Mandy. And thank you, Michael. This has been an amazing conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
This is my favorite place to be. It's such an honor.
Yeah.
I enjoy being with both of you so much. So thank you so much.
And we love having you, and we'll have you back again. So thank you, Michael. Thank you, Mandy. And we'll see everyone next week.